Right, let's start with a number that doesn't make sense. 2 million. That's how many solar panels China installed on a single mountain range in Tibet. Not near Tibet. Not below Tibet. On it. At 4,600 meters above sea level. Higher than Mont Blanc. In a place where the oxygen is so thin that a healthy adult starts making bad decisions within minutes. Where the temperature drops to minus 30 degrees Celsius. Where the ground is frozen solid for 5 months of the year. And they did it in 11 months. 2 million panels. 11 months. 4,600 meters. That's where we're starting today, because that number is the mild part of this story. This is the Kela Photovoltaic Power Station in the Yalong River Basin of Sichuan Province. The world's largest and highest altitude hydro-solar hybrid power plant. A 1.2 gigawatt machine sitting on a frozen plateau in eastern Tibet, connected by a 500 kilovolt cable to a dam that is nearly as tall as the Eiffel Tower. And 300 kilometers away in the Qinghai Desert, another solar park. This one covers 609 square kilometers. That's roughly the size of Singapore, except instead of a city, it's 7 million solar panels arranged in perfect rows across what used to be dead, cracked, uninhabitable desert. China is not building solar farms. China is building solar countries. Today we're going to find out how they did it, why it's more complicated than it looks, and why the most surprising thing about this story isn't the engineering at all. It's the sheep, the impossible place. Here's the problem with building anything at 4,600 meters. At sea level, you have 100% of the oxygen you need. At 4,600 meters, where the Kela station sits, you have roughly 50% of that. Half. Which sounds manageable until you actually try to do manual labor in it. Your body works harder to breathe. Your reaction time's slow. Your decision-making deteriorates. Prolonged exposure causes altitude sickness, fluid on the lungs, and in extreme cases, death. This isn't a construction site. This is the physiological equivalent of building a factory halfway up a very serious mountain, in a place where the frozen season runs from November to March, and the ground is riddled with permafrost, hidden ice deep in the soil that expands and contracts with every freeze-thaw cycle. If you simply hammer foundations into it, they move. Your panels tilt. Your cables snap. Your entire installation slowly walks sideways down the mountain over the course of a decade. So before a single panel went in, the engineers had to design specialized pile foundations, structures specifically calculated to anchor into permafrost without disturbing it. Then they had to transport 2 million photovoltaic modules and 5,300 inverters up roads that, in several places, simply didn't exist yet. The construction window? 7 months. July to November 2022. That's it. After that, the mountain freezes solid and you stop. They finished Phase 1 in June 2023, 11 months from groundbreaking to power generation, on a mountain, in the death zone. For context, the average large-scale infrastructure project in Europe takes 4 to 7 years just to get planning permission. But here's what makes Kela genuinely extraordinary. And here's the part that nobody talks about when they publish the drone footage of shiny panels on a hillside. Solar power is useless on its own. That sounds wrong, I know. But hear me out. Solar power is intermittent. It peaks at noon, vanishes at night, and drops to near zero every time a cloud rolls in. If you feed that directly into a national power grid, you get chaos. Lights flicker. Industrial machinery throws errors. Hospitals start having very bad days. The entire promise of solar energy has always come with an asterisk. Unless you can store it, you can't rely on it. The water battery. 50 kilometers from the Kela solar station, in the same river valley, sits the Liangheku hydropower station. It is 295 meters tall, just 35 meters shorter than the Eiffel Tower from tip to base. Its reservoir holds 10.8 billion cubic meters of water, and it is, in essence, a massive rechargeable battery. Not a metaphorical battery, a literal one. Here's how it works. During the day, when the sun is hammering down on those 2 million panels at 4,600 meters and the solar output is at its peak, the hydropower station throttles back. It reduces how much water it releases through its turbines. The water stays in the reservoir, held at height. Potential energy, stored in the form of altitude. When the sun goes down or clouds move in, or it's 2 o'clock in the morning and the solar panels are generating precisely nothing, the dam opens its gates. The turbines spin up. The stored potential energy converts instantly to electrical output, filling the gap left by the solar panels. The result is a combined output that barely fluctuates. Smooth, reliable, continuous power, flowing from a mountain in Tibet through a 500 kilovolt transmission line into the national grid. Engineers call this a hydro-solar handshake. I call it the water battery, and it is, by any measure, one of the most elegant engineering solutions in modern infrastructure. The system works seasonally too. In winter, the Tibetan Plateau is dry but intensely sunny. In summer, heavy rainfall feeds the reservoir, but cloud cover reduces solar output. The two systems are almost perfectly counter-cyclical. Nature's own load balancing. One compensates for the other all year round. This is the world's first gigawatt-scale hybrid system of its kind. The Kela station alone generates enough electricity to power 6 million Chinese households. Combined with Liang'eku, the Yalong River Basin's long-term plan is 100 gigawatts of clean energy capacity, capable of producing 300 billion kilowatt-hours per year. That is roughly the annual electricity consumption of the entire population of the United States, from one river valley in Tibet. And if you want more of this mega engineering, impossible scales, and the moments where human ambition meets absolute physics, subscribe now, because what comes next is genuinely strange. The robot army and the sheep. Right, here's where it gets properly weird. Operating 16 square kilometers of solar panels at 4,600 meters is not something you can do with a team of humans in hard hats. Partly because of the altitude, partly because there are 2 million panels to monitor, and partly because dust and snow accumulation on solar panels can reduce efficiency by up to 30%, which at this scale means losing the output equivalent of hundreds of thousands of homes at the flick of a weather system. So Kela runs on robots. The Kela station uses Huawei's Fusion solar platform, an AI-powered management system that runs a digital twin of the entire installation. Every single string of panels has a live virtual counterpart in a simulation. Real-time, continuous. If a panel develops a microcrack, the thermal signature changes. The system flags it. A LiDAR-equipped drone is dispatched. The drone flies the grid using thermal imaging, pinpoints the fault to within centimeters, and logs it for the maintenance crew who only go out when the machine tells them to. Not when a schedule says so, when the data says so. On the ground, autonomous cleaning robots crawl the panel arrays, removing dust and snow. Not occasionally, continuously. These things don't sleep and don't need oxygen. An edge AI processes the data locally, on site, so the grid can react to sudden changes in solar output within milliseconds. Not seconds, milliseconds. This is what allows the Kela station to function as what engineers call a virtual generator, delivering the same grid stability as a coal or nuclear plant, but from sunlight and water on a frozen Tibetan mountainside. Now, the sheep. Down at the Gonghe Talatan Solar Park in Qinghai, the Singapore-sized one, something unexpected happened after construction finished. The millions of panels shading the desert floor reduced wind speed at ground level. The shade reduced surface temperature. The reduced evaporation meant moisture stayed in the soil. Grass started growing in a desert that had been effectively dead for decades. Local herdsmen noticed. Today, thousands of sheep graze between the panel rows at Talatan. They keep the grass trimmed, which prevents fire risk and stops vegetation from shading the lower panels. In return, they get food. This is not a PR exercise, it's a functional maintenance strategy that replaced a fleet of lawnmowers with livestock. At Kela, the panels are raised to a minimum height of 1.8 meters. specifically so that yaks and sheep can roam freely underneath. Tibetan herding families whose traditional livelihoods were threatened by industrial development now share their pasture with 2 million solar panels. The panels provide tax revenue to the Ghazi Tibetan Autonomous Prefecture, 600 million yuan during construction, 150 million yuan annually thereafter. The herders keep their yaks. The yaks fertilize the soil. The soil, increasingly moistened by the shade of the panels, becomes more productive. A solar farm in Tibet that improves the desert it's built on. Nobody planned that. The verdict. So here's where we are. China, in the space of a few years, has built a solar installation on a frozen mountain that generates enough electricity for 6 million homes, stabilized by a dam that uses the laws of physics as a battery, and a desert installation the size of an entire country that is, entirely by accident, bringing dead land back to life. In 2023 alone, China commissioned as much new solar capacity as the entire world installed in 2022. The Ordos facility in Inner Mongolia, currently under construction, will produce more solar power than half of the United Kingdom. The long-term plan for the Yalong River basin alone would power 100 million households. Is this impressive? Obviously. Is it enough to solve climate change on its own? No. Is the land use, the geopolitical context, the environmental impact of manufacturing 27 million panels, the effect on Tibetan ecosystems, all of that more complicated than a drone shot of a shiny hillside suggests? Yes. Of course it is. But here's the thing. When you build something at 4,600 meters in 11 months, with robots and frozen soil and an Eiffel Tower tall dam as your battery backup, and then sheep show up and decide the place suits them just fine, you're not just building a power plant. You're demonstrating that the physics of the problem can be beaten, that the scale can be achieved, that the engineering exists. Whether the rest of the world is willing to match it is a different question entirely. And the answer to that one is considerably less encouraging. If you found this useful, or if the sheep caught you off guard, hit subscribe. We've got more mega builds coming. Projects where ambition meets geology, and the planet doesn't always blink first. See you in the next one.